things. I've forgotten how dramatic that was, Ronnie.
It's quite dramatic. Yeah, I'm expecting the newsreader to come up after that.
Well, you can do it if you want.
If there's any newsreaders left now, they've not all been done for nefarious things, have they now, all the newsreaders?
You're getting AI ones now. Have you noticed that, where they're a little bit too still, but...
yeah. I suppose AI ones can't be the subject of controversy, can they, really? No, perhaps that's why. But I don't watch the
AI is.
Yeah, well, AI itself is. Yeah, I don't watch the news on telly at all. You know.
No, I don't even have it. I don't have a telly, so.
No. Good thing. Yeah.
Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in, and we've both been to our doctors during the week, just to confirm that we're both still alive. I haven't seen that for a few weeks either, Ronnie.
No. It's good to see it again.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds us of the good old days, doesn't it?
Yeah, the good old days when we were young.
The good old days, yeah.
Yeah.
Were we ever young? So,
if we were, it was a very, very long time ago.
Yeah, you're freezing a little bit actually there, Ronnie. But
is that me, or was that me sitting still, or was it?
No, it's you.
It was genuine, was it? Am I okay now?
No.
Oh dear.
Well, it's only a few seconds though, so.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, shouldn't be too bad. So you took your young self off to NARD last weekend and gave a talk, Ronnie.
Well, it was National Animal Rights Day in Birmingham. I think the National Animal Rights Day. I think.
How many people were there, Ronnie? Can you remember?
How many people?
Yeah,
it was about 100. I think it's hard to say. It was a good crowd. It was the most that there's been in Birmingham. I think for the event. I think that it's been. It's only been going in Birmingham for about 4 years. I think this was the best attended. I mean, it took place in something like 95 towns and cities throughout the world. And I think probably more in the USA perhaps than in other places, but it was a worldwide thing. And the one in Birmingham, I was actually introducing the speakers, but they asked me to do a little speech myself at the beginning, which I did. And what I did was I had a placard with a picture of Tom Regan on it, and I asked the people attended if they knew who was in the photo, who he was, and I think the only person who knew was Louise, and that wasn't because, and she didn't know I was taking the placard. She didn't know anything about it. You see, I'd made it, and she was doing something else, and but she knew because they had his book, The Case for Animal Rights at Home, in the 1980s, I think, in the late 1980s. So she's always known who Tom Regan was. Yeah, but I don't think anyone else knew, or certainly no one else said they knew.
You sent that video that somebody had taken on the phone, which we couldn't use. It was too late.
Yeah.
Somebody did shout out Tom Regan.
They might have done at the beginning. I'm not sure who that was. They didn't shout it out again when I said to call it out, but there were 100 people there, so there wasn't many. Certainly wasn't many people shouting out his name. No. But in a sense, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think as you rightly said, had it been Peter Singer, I think the response would have been the same. I think people probably wouldn't have known even who he was. But it does show that that kind of lack of knowledge of the history of the animal rights movement that so many people don't know. Yeah. Probably the most
Well, I gave a talk at VegFest, and it must have been 2017, 2016 even. So, good almost a decade ago. And nobody had heard of Reagan. A couple of people have heard of Singer, and nobody had heard of Joan Danaher either. So,
no, I'm not really surprised about Joan Danaher, and she's not so well known among people. But yeah, I think But I mean, I then read out a couple of quotes from from Tom. Really, to say that it's about animal rights. It's not about animal welfare. Basically, both of them were really regarding that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're here to thrash through my I've got this idea which is kind of percolating around, and it's been with me for a few weeks, and I was trying to think if I could come up with some kind of idea where we could be a bit more unified as a movement. And so I've got a bit of an opening statement, Ronnie. So if you bear with me, I'll go through that. It should only take 5 minutes. And
okay.
Yeah, and then we can have a chat about it. There's also I've got some clips that I want to talk about as well. So I mean, the background is I've been battling with this idea in my little brain for a few weeks, and I asked Ronnie to join me. I suppose that you could call this a special Still Alive, kind of discuss it really, because I think that the division of labor idea would be good for the movement and might even make it more unified, as I've just said. And I'm basing the idea, well, I'm marrying two ideas for this thing. First of all is Donald Watson's thing from 1944 in the very first Vegan News, where he talked about ripening up as a concept. And I'm marrying that with your idea, Ronnie, which is, the argument that you've made for the last few years, that we need an increase in vegan education. In fact, we need vegan education all the time and everywhere. And so I'm trying to marry those two ideas. I mean, obviously, we can talk about what the phrase vegan education means, because it's not that necessarily clear, but I'll just let that kind of ride for a moment. It usually involves vegan activists doing stuff, really. Now, the only vegan activists who will do vegan education, it's only those who will do it. So that's the first issue. A lot of us over the years have bemoaned, or at least have been aware, that most people who identify as vegans are not generally regarded as active or activists. And of course, there are a number of reasons for that. Some things will prevent, or at least seriously curtail, why somebody doesn't want to be an activist. And then the next issue, for me at least, is that of all the numbers of vegans who are activists, very few devote themselves exclusively to vegan education. So that's the bit that I thought it'd be quite good within the movement to encourage that, because we need more of it. So we can even talk about whether that's even a problem. A lot of people tell us that it's not even a problem, that, for vegans to do all manner of things, get involved with a variety of different activities. Those activities usually get labeled things like single issue events or single issue campaigns. It's not a problem. They can integrate their veganism within that, whereas I'm more focused on making it the very visible thing. So my proposal then, if we want vegan education everywhere and all the time, is that more vegan activists who will do vegan education, these are needed. So it's a question of getting them. Now, there's a couple of things that I'm not saying. For example, there are many vegans who are totally committed to doing single issue events and campaigns. Some of those will not do vegan education. They seem to see no value in it. And then others are fine, once again, to do a kind of mix and match where they'll do a bit of this and do a bit of that and all that. So I'm not saying that those who don't want to do vegan education should switch or anything like that, from whatever else they're doing to vegan education. I just want us to be able to figure out a way of increasing the amount. If we want vegan education everywhere and all the time, it seems to me that it's a good thing that those who will do vegan education can help the situation most by focusing on it. It's of the existing vegans, it's only those of this group, this minority of a minority, who can increase the numbers of vegan educators. The others won't or don't want to do it, So there are some drawbacks to this, and I'm not saying this is a particularly workable proposal, and there might be a number of reasons why it's not, and we might be able to discuss some of that. I think that one of the problems is the fact that people don't agree on what veganism even means. And this issue, if I put this up here, this issue was brought into being in Search of Veganism #1 from 1949. I mean, we're going back a long way here. And Leslie Cross is saying, look, what is veganism? That's actually not as easy to answer as it might seem to be. And he says, to begin with, we have to clear our minds of certain assumptions to realize, for example, that when we say veganism is this or that, what we are really saying is my idea of veganism is this or that. And basically what Cross is saying is that's not going to work for a social movement situation. We need to have some kind of agreement about what veganism means, right? And of course we know with all the arguments that go on social media that agreement is absent. How we might get it, I'm not quite sure. Now, another problem is there are some people who will actively seek to undermine the meaning of veganism. And I think this is a really serious problem, because many of those people who seek to undermine veganism nevertheless call themselves vegans. And so that's a real problem. There are lots of people who propose things that are not vegan while still, doing that very thing of calling themselves vegan. They will mock veganism. So some people who will call themselves vegans will mock veganism. So I've got a couple of examples of this. In fact, I've got 3 or 4 clips. I'm just going to run through this. The first one you're probably very familiar with, I would think, Ronnie. This is
excited for me. I shower a lot.
Whoops. Let me get this all organized. Remove from studio and put this up. Right. Okay.
Many minutes at a time.
Right. So this is Brian Cateman. Okay. So you've probably seen this clip, and now this is really interesting. The social construction of what's going on here. Now this is Cateman.
Undoubtedly, we all could do more. But what if I told you that I did make a more difficult sacrifice for our planet? What if I told you that I am a vegan? Did you feel that? You did. One word, and everyone gets a little bit nervous.
Now, Ronnie, do you think this is still real? Because there's a lot of people claiming this, and I'm not at all convinced that this is even a problem, that people kind of almost like freeze when they hear the word vegan, and it changes everything. Because he's going to go on and say, whatever else goes on now, everything has changed as soon as you say I'm a vegan.
No, I don't think that's true. It's not what I've experienced.
No,
it's not what
I don't. But a lot of people, I've noticed a lot of people on social media will say that, right?
But you see,
I just think people hate vegans at this point.
Yeah, but you see, I think if there is any truth in that, it's because of a lack of understanding of what veganism really is. You see, that's the thing. If people think it's just some kind of restrictive diet, and they don't properly understand the reasons behind it, then I think they are more likely to be prejudiced against vegans.
Yeah, okay. There's a couple of points here being made about Leslie Cross. I'll come back to that, I think. Let's just proceed with this for a second.
You can be honest with me. This is TEDx. It's a safe space. You feel a little awkward. Why? Because I am a vegan, and presumably many of you are not? What is that about? Well, we've all had that conversation before. You're out to dinner with a friend or a colleague, and you learn that the person you're with is a vegan. You had no idea. You're surprised. And while the person in front of you may not look like this, or like this.
Okay, so introduction of a little bit of mocking here and stereotypes and everything. And this thing about, oh, you had no idea. And of course, as you'll notice as we go through, veganism, as usual, is presented as a diet. And so there's this thing about the stereotype of what a vegan should even look like, right? So it's all part of this thing. And you heard the reaction of the audience, laughing and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to. I mean, it makes people think that if there's a group of people and one of them says they're a vegan, then that kind of will immediately be challenging to those people, won't it? That there's a person there that's got, if they're aware of veganism as an ethical stance rather than just a diet, then there is this person there who's taking an ethical stance that they're not. And so that maybe does make people there feel uncomfortable. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing that they feel a bit uncomfortable and maybe start to question themselves and their own, their own attitudes, their own views.
I tend to think that a lot of people nowadays, especially now that we seem to have a lot of vegan curious people, then they're not going to fall off their chair to find out that somebody's a vegan anymore. I don't think.
No, they're not. I mean, I find that when I do stalls at various events, I tend to mainly, because of the type of events I do stalls, I tend to get quite a lot of older people come up to the stall. And there are some that are vegan, and there's a lot of interest, to be honest. But almost all of them have a member of their family who's vegan, usually a younger person in their family or in their extended family who's vegan. So they're already familiar with veganism.
Yeah, I must admit, we do get that quite a lot in Dublin on stall too. And of course, that's a great help, isn't it? If they've got a relative who is already identifying as vegan. Okay, I'll let this go a little bit longer.
Your perception of them has immediately changed. There is no going back to whatever it was you thought of them before this moment. Now, back at dinner, the vegan likely feels compelled to explain to you that while he or she is a vegan, by no means did your culinary decision inspire.
Yeah, so this is culinary decision. It's all about presenting veganism as usual as a diet.
Offense.
Yeah.
You in turn decide to kindly acknowledge that reconciling gesture and attempt to very quickly move the conversation along to a more unifying topic. And yet, you still feel whatever it is you or your neighbor might be feeling right now. A tinge of nervousness, a pulse of discomfort, the manifestation of a mouth twinge or the eyes widening. There is me, and then there's you. And somehow, our perception of one another is no longer the same.
You see, I think it's good that people feel like that. To be honest, I think it's good that happens.
Yeah, but I mean, did you hear what he said? He said that both persons' perception of each other has changed. Now, That's not going to be the case in the first place with the vegan, isn't it? So,
well, yeah, it's more the vegan knows that they're going to have a meal with non-vegans, and those non-vegans will be in, animal products, parts of animals, or secretions of animals, other animals in front of them. They know that. I mean, some people that won't do that, that refuse to even, dine with non-vegans, aren't there? But those who do are going to be. They already know that. They already know that. It's really the non-vegans that may not be aware that the person they're eating with is vegan. And I think if those people feel uncomfortable that person is vegan, that's a good thing, isn't it? Because it's kind of it's making them think, isn't it? It's shaking them up a bit. That's what they need. They need that. Otherwise, how are they going to become aware of anything?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point. All right. We've now concluding this is the mocking bit.
Well, as it turns out, I'm not a vegan. Whew. I'm sorry to all the vegans in the room who have lost one of their own. And to the rest of you, well, you can safely take a deep sigh of relief knowing that I am a carnivore just like you.
So I think that is presenting veganism as being way more problematic in society than it actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I absolutely. But you see, it's in the interests of those who wish to, who don't want an increase in veganism. It's in the interest of those people to portray it as problematic, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. You see, I'm going to come on to that because I've got a kind of solution to this issue, but it would need them to stop mocking vegans. And I suppose it might mean that we don't mock them. It's just that we see each other as doing different things. And then the complication, I think, is the ones who want to mock veganism, but they think of themselves as vegan. That's a complication. But another one, I've complained for many years, as you will know, about the social construction of there's a lot of ableist language coming up, folks, of the crazy vegan stereotype. We talked about that quite a lot. And the people who have put that about for many years now, as many as 16, 17 now, are Tobias Leonhardt and Sebastian Joy. They're both on record as constructing this idea that a vegan who is ethically consistent, there might be something wrong with them. So this is one that you've probably seen already. Then it switches to something which is a little bit newer. So let's put this one up first.
Being moderate is much more dangerous for them than being radical. If you're a radical, if you're like a crazy person, like shouting in the street, like let's just take it extreme, like let's take a really crazy vegan, literally.
Yeah. So when this guy came to Dublin, Ronnie, about 4 or 5 people stood up and asked him to apologize for this idea that people on the street shout and they wave their arms about, and this is his construction of this problematic type of vegan. And we've got to remember that this isn't a workshop. Now, this is a workshop full of recent and sometimes new vegans, and this guy was going around from workshop to workshop giving out this message that that crazy vegans exist, and they're the ones you'll see on the street, and they'll be behaving in this way. So this is a workshop. Melanie Joy is there, and this was repeated over and over again, in several ways. But then just listen to what he says now.
And he's shouting everywhere, and blah, blah, blah. Nobody takes him seriously, right? But it's like if you have like a moderate person, like something like Peter Singer, he's not entirely vegan, but
Now, did you catch that? So he corrects himself. He says he's not entirely vegan.
No.
Right. Which is true.
Well, he's not vegan.
No.
See.
No,
No.
he's not vegan. But he goes on to say that this non-vegan is kind of better for veganism than a vegan.
Well, I think, I mean, first of all, he doesn't understand what the word radical means. Radical has nothing to do with people shouting and waving their arms. Maybe some people have radical ideas that do that, but being radical isn't to do with that. Being radical is about going to the root of a problem. Radical comes from Latin radix, which means root. It's dealing with the root of a problem and trying to solve. Going to the fundamental. The fundamentals of things, really, in terms of creating change. And you can put across radical ideas in a very gentle way. There's no necessity that for there to be shouting and waving of arms in order to put across radical ideas. In fact, it would be a hindrance, I would say, to do that. And I know very few vegans that do that kind of thing. I mean, now and again, you had sort of, there used to be the invasions of places by DXE, I think, where they'd go in McDonald's and wave placards and shout and stuff, which is rather strange because, of course, Wayne Chung, who's the kind of, you might say, top guy in DXE, doesn't even he doesn't even promote veganism. But that, that kind of thing. But that was only very small in comparison with the.
He's left DXE now, Ronnie.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Oh well, I don't know
I think his sister might be running it or something. So.
Right. Okay. Well,
he's still making a bit of dosh from it, but.
Yeah. But no, I mean, people who do outreach don't do that. It's completely untrue.
I've got to admit,
fabrication.
I've not seen much of it, and I've done street stalls since the 1980s, and I think I started in 1981 in Liverpool, and we were doing street stalls really regularly, a couple of times a week, and it doesn't paint a picture of vegans as far as I can see.
No.
Let's go back to what he says next.
He's much more dangerous to the meat industry because he's like so rational, and he can convince people, and the crazy people are not going to convince him.
Right, and so that stereotype is constructed on the real vegans being crazy, and people like Peter Singer being rational, and the real vegans are irrational. And again, remind people that there's a whole series of workshops in which this was put out. And I think the result of it has been the kind of things that I now see on Instagram and TikTok, where you've got a lot of people who are advocating the kind of things that Leonard advocates for, which is, vegan except for cheese and vegan except for X, vegan except for Y, this kind of stuff. And Singer in this interview, although it's not in this clip, he talked about vegans until 6, which was an issue. There was a time a few years ago when somebody came up with the idea of lacto vegan, right? So there's always been this push from various people to reduce the meaning of veganism, and in Leonard's terms, make it easier to join veganism by bringing the cost of membership down. In other words, he wants a vegan movement full of non-vegans, but called vegan, right? So I think that's problematic, not least there's names for those people already, like vegetarian or pescatarian, for example, right? So there's that. Now this is much newer. This is only a couple of years ago, and as you can see, Leonard is interviewing Peter Singer, but he can't resist, again, rehearsing this stereotype.
I mean, the people who would do civil disobedience and direct action today, they would say it is to garner attention for these topics and to to get it in the media and to really create more a bigger dynamic of other people who want to stand up, etc. Do you see a place for that at this point, like for of course non-violent and not crazy, but still confrontational direct action, civil disobedience?
Right. So again, can't resist using the stereotype. And it's interesting because in Singer's answer, Ronnie, you still there? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
In Singer's answer, he talked about what you just talked about, that, oh, well, the idea of kind of running into restaurants and shouting at people. So he was thinking of the DXE model, which is a few years old now, I think.
Yes.
And also things like Tash Peterson. I mean, obviously Singer is Australian, and so there was a lot of that in Australia with Tash going on. But I mean, I don't think that is the majority of what you would call vegan education or outreach anyway. The disruption stuff.
No.
We tried it. Somebody from Dublin went to the DXE house in the very early days. It was just setting up DXE. They lived in the house for a few weeks, came back with this idea, and so they formed an all-female DXE group. This is like, I don't know, 11 years ago, 10 years ago, and probably even more than that, I don't know. And I was the only male involved, and I didn't take part in any of the decision making. I just filmed it, because I used to have this thing where I would put on this thing which said press and all that, and I would pretend that I was a member of the press who would come along with this group. So as soon as they'd gone from the event, I would go back in and say, can I speak to the manager? What did you make of that? Right. And all that kind of stuff. And the interesting thing was that a lot of them were just bewildered. I don't know what they were on about, that kind of stuff. But what we did find was that doing that kind of disruption in a restaurant was very unpopular and could even lead to violence. Whereas if you do that kind of disruption in a supermarket, it had a completely different effect. In fact, people would come from different parts of the store just to have a look at what's going on, because they were interested, because they weren't totally invested in their evening. They were just shopping, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that if you want to do a disruption, then if you did it in a supermarket, it's much more positive than if you did it in a restaurant where people have paid their money. They might be on their first date or whatever. It might be a wedding anniversary or something, and there are times when people can get a little bit shirty about that then. Yeah, but it was interesting that when Leonard asked Singer about civil disobedience, he immediately thought of that DXE example, which you mentioned as well.
Yes,
Ronnie,
yeah.
which is interesting. Okay, let me get rid of that, and I've got one more to load up, and this is really, really recently. And I'm going to have to play it about twice because it's very quick, lots of bad language. And so this is part of the slingshot thing, and there's a couple of nuances in this. So I'm going to just stop it a couple of times, but then I want to play it a second.
And before any of you fucking knobbers comes and claims that like this is some sort of fucking woke ideology about fucking veganism or any of that fucking bollocks, firstly.
Right, so woke ideology, like something to do with veganism and all that bollocks, right? But then he says, yes.
Yes, we should at the very fucking least be having conversations on whether it's okay to keep fucking factory farming pigs and chickens and other animals. Because if any of you guys saw news about a company doing this to fucking kittens, you'd all be fucking livid. And secondly, it's not just about slaughtering farm animals. It's about the process and it's about the bullshit. The food.
Right, so there's quite a lot in there. I'm going to play that again. So first of all, he does that kind of attack on what, or you could see as an attack on veganism, all that bollocks, veganism and all that bollocks. But then he goes, yes, we should talk like vegans, perhaps that's what he meant. But then he starts talking about factory farming, and that's not veganism as well. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. And then right at the end, it's not just about slaughtering, it's about the process. And of course, for me, Slingshot has got the problem about it, which is, to me, Slingshot seems to be an advert for non-intensive farming, if you ask me. But I'm sure they won't think of it that way. But let's just see it again, very quick. But why would he do that?
Absolute
Why
fucking
would he-
dickhead. And before any of you fucking knobbers comes and claims that like this is some sort of fucking woke ideology about fucking veganism or any of that fucking bollocks. Firstly, yes, we should at the very fucking least be having conversations on whether it's okay to keep fucking factory farming pigs and chickens and other animals. Because if any of you guys saw news about a company doing this to fucking kittens, you'd all be fucking livid. And secondly, it's not just about slaughtering farm animals. It's about the process and it's about the bullshit. The food
So why would somebody from Slingshot feel the need? Because obviously that's a script. You know, he didn't say that. That was written for him. And because I don't know who that is. I think he's an actor, but I don't know who that is. But why the need to call veganism a load of woke bollocks?
Well, is it because they're hoping to get non-vegans on board in the campaign against factory farming? Because this is what these campaigns
and that necessitates calling veganism bollocks.
Yeah, maybe they think that by saying that will attract more non-vegans to the cause, possibly.
Well, my general thing, and this is where I'll finish my little statement bit in a way, but I don't know why these people have got to be so divisive like this, right? I mean, why can't they say something like, well, look, our position is not veganism, but if you want to check out veganism, then go and check out Andy Atkinson's website, or I'll go and have a look at Go Vegan World, right? And so I don't see why they can't say that. Well, look, you know, we're not putting together a vegan case. If you want to hear a vegan case, go and speak to a vegan group. Now that would be the unifying thing for them to do, right? You know, the real problem is a lot of them are intent on not just saying we're not vegan, so go speak to a vegan. What they're actually involved in, like with Leonard, is redefining veganism, and that then is very divisive.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So that's my problem with it. It's almost like you could envisage a way where they just say, okay, well, we've got our anti-factory farming thing and all that, you know. Leonard could say, well, I've got a vegetarian position, sometimes pescatarian, because he seems to have some total dislike for fishes for some reason. But if you want to go and speak to a vegan, then go here, there, or everywhere, but not me. Now that would solve it in a way, wouldn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, you almost wonder whether some of these people are actually in the pay of the animal agriculture industry, don't you?
Well, everybody says that, but I'm not sure about that.
I mean, they wouldn't need to be to say what they say, but you know, they're in that case, that you know, that industry is getting people working for them without paying them, aren't they? Doing them a favor, you know, by putting people off veganism or trying to.
Well, I know with the vegan strategist, his entire position is based on making becoming vegan easier. And so first of all, he'll say that it's a diet and nothing else. He doesn't even like calling it a lifestyle. He objects to calling it a lifestyle. So he's kind of divisive in that sense, because I've always said that with a position like that, if he was called the vegetarian tactician, that to me would make sense, because it's not vegan. And then therefore vegans could say, okay, well, you know, well, that's vegetarianism, this is veganism. And then the public can decide between the two. But if you've got one of them slagging off the other, but it's divisive, isn't it?
But it's kind of like saying, well, let's make anti-racism easier. You know, let's make it so that you can be a little bit racist now and again, or you only need to be anti-racist until 6, and after that you can kind of come out with your racist talk. It's a similar thing, isn't it? It's not. It's a lack of understanding of what veganism really is. That it's a justice movement. It's a lack of understanding of that. That's where it comes from, or a refusal to understand, a refusal to accept what it really is.
I wonder whether, you see, I've never been able to understand why somebody whose position is not veganism wants the label. It doesn't understand. It doesn't kind of work for me in the same way as I always had a problem. One of my main, I did a Substack recently about labels because, you know, there's labeling theory in sociology. Labels are very important. Now, if you mislabel yourself, it can be a problem. There's loads of sociology in that. But if you deliberately do it for some political reason, then that's just kind of weird. But of course, it's not just our movement; it's the feminist movement, and also, I mean, look at how many people in the modern day Labour Party in Britain will call themselves a socialist. Well, actually, I don't know whether they would now. Would they?
No, I don't think they would. I
No.
think they look on it as they regard it as a negative term. Of course, it isn't, but they would regard it as such.
Yeah, but Leonard regards veganism as a negative term. So why would he call himself a vegan?
Well, maybe because he wants to change what veganism is. He
Well,
wants
he does. He does. Yeah, but I mean, like, who's got the right? Who's got the right to do that?
Well, no, nobody has, because it is what it is. It is as it was defined by the founders of the vegan movement. That's what it is. You know, otherwise, anyone can just, as Leslie Cross said, anyone can just make up their own version of veganism.
Make it up as you go along. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. So I could say, well, I can eat steak a couple of days a week, and I'm still vegan. You know, and you just have your own version of, well, that's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah,
you
but
have to have, you know.
He does say that though, Ronnie, because he did a blog entry where he said if somebody offers you 10,000 euros to eat a steak, you should do it because then you can use the money for good. See,
Yeah, but there's other implications to that, isn't it? You know, like if somebody offered me £1 million to kill someone, and I went and killed that person, I could argue, well, look, I could use that £1 million to save loads of people. So on one hand, I've killed one person, but I've used this £1 million to pay for healthcare and cures for loads of other people. So, you know, so what's wrong with that? It's the same. It's the same ridiculous argument, isn't it? Because basically, if you consume animal products, you're actually paying someone, you know, to kill another animal, aren't you? That's what it amounts to. So that's really what he's saying, you know. And I'd say to him, well, okay, look, I'll give you £1 million to kill someone, and you know, to kill another human, and then you can then use that money to save loads of humans. So that'd be all right then, won't it? Of course, it wouldn't be, and he wouldn't be able to argue that it would be, and it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm just going through a few of the comments, Aaron, because I don't know whether you've seen any.
No, I've not had a chance to look.
No, I've not really. Very annoying about the diet thing. But the thing is, again, you see, if you think about who is influential in the movement, these people have kind of got a few things to answer for, because, for example, we commonly get the claim, journalists say it, most of the public will say, if you ask them, I'm sure if you took your clipboard down to your local shopping center and asked them, what do you think veganism means? You'll get a dietary based answer, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Or you'll get a kind of Ed Winters kind of answer, which is it's about reducing suffering, because that's what Ed Winters says it is, because he says it's easier for him to reduce it to the RSPCA level rather than actually talking about what veganism is as a philosophical idea. Right?
I don't know why he regards that. I don't know what the difficulty is in talking about it as a philosophical idea. Why would that be so difficult?
I don't know, but he's on tape saying he just thinks it's easier for him to talk about the reduction of suffering. And one thing that it could be, because a lot of people say this, is the fact that people understand what that means. That's why a lot of people will defend the use or the overuse or the exclusive use of words like cruelty and abuse nowadays, because they would argue that people understand what that means. And so then you can move the conversation on. The real problem is that that's exactly right. The actual problem is that they do understand what those phrases mean, but it doesn't mean what a vegan thinks it means. It means what cultural speciesism thinks it means, which is the RSPCA, don't be cruel, but it's okay to eat them. Whereas the vegan understanding is don't use them and don't eat them or anything else. But those things are separate ideas. So if you feed into, often I'll see film and you can see that the vegan and the person they're talking to are talking at cross purposes, using the same words, right? And the vegan often is not understanding that they've got a lot of work to do to reconcile the differences between them, because the cultural speciesists, which are everybody, are going to be using the cultural speciesist understanding of words like cruelty, which doesn't mean go vegan, and it doesn't mean you can't eat them. Doesn't mean, what it means is you can't kick them around the playground, that kind of thing. That's what the cultural speciesist understanding of cruelty and abuse means. Because you ask people, are you against cruelty? Everybody says, yeah. Can you define it? They'll tell you, it's about kicking dogs or throwing cats into wheelie bins, or neglecting a horse in a field, right? And then when you say, yeah, but what about the slaughterhouses? You lose them then, because, well, what's that got to do with it? They actually say, what's that got to do with it? It doesn't compute for them, because they're cultural speciesists. We've got to get around their understanding and educate them that there's a different way of looking at it. And the easiest way is, rather than arguing the toss of what words like cruelty and abuse means, you use different words, like Reagan's words, right? Which doesn't get you bogged down in those arguments in the first place. And that seems to me to be eminently preferable to actually have to spend time kind of arguing the toss about what cruelty means, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't use those words in outreach. I mean, people I talk to will use them to me. They'll say, "Oh, I'm opposed to cruelty," and people that will come from members of the public, but it's not a word I use.
There's a lot of comments here by the vegan anthem, so thanks for those. Strictly or get out. Okay.
Yeah.
What's this one? Because the question of definition is so obviously important. Well, see, that brings up another question for me, Ronnie, is, of all the groups that don't seem to give a shit about the definition, it's the Vegan Society. They never get involved with debates about the definition of veganism, and they don't seem to have a particular adherence to the history of veganism.
No, they're very food. They're very food focused. I mean, the biggest part of the vegan society is their kite mark. Is kind of working to authorize companies to put the vegan size vegan kite mark on products. That's
geographically, it's quite close to you, isn't it, Ronnie? The vegan.
Yeah, that's only in Birmingham.
Do you know the people who work there?
I know some people who work there. Yeah.
And I mean, do they understand what veganism is?
The ones I know, yes, I think they do. Okay. But you see, they've got a job working for the Vegan Society, which is far better than a job working somewhere else, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I'm asking you though, but I mean, like,
yeah.
I mean, they're not going to say, well, principally it's a diet.
No, they wouldn't. They know. I mean, I'm only talking about a couple of people, and what the others that work, they've got a lot of people working for what the others think, I don't know, but the people I know that it's not a diet.
And didn't you go? Am I right in thinking you went to there's like an exhibition, isn't there?
Yeah, they had an exhibition at the library in Birmingham that ran for a few months,
there,
and it was, and no, not now, because it was last year, and because I think last year was the what was it? It was 2024, wasn't it? That was the 80th anniversary. I think it was.
You went there then. So if you could imagine being a member of the public going there, what do you think your impression of what veganism is from seeing the Vegan Society exhibition?
Well, I think people probably would have understood what it was, because there were quotes there from certainly from Donald Watson, I think from Leslie Cross as well. There were quotes on the wall from those people.
Right.
So I think that they would have taken, members of the public visiting the exhibition would have taken something from that.
Because the only thing I know about it is the fact that people made a big fuss of the fact that Watson's ration book was there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, there were things like that. I just think it's the normal sort of everyday work into the Vegan Society is like, and some of their sort of campaigns as well. I mean, I'm involved as I'm like, they've got a community network that I'm involved in as a like local organizer, and which is handy. It's handy for getting materials from them and stuff like that. But some of the tasks that they ask people to do are food related, stuff like there's this campaign to make it so that coffee shops don't charge extra for plant milk. They're not going to charge extra for plant milk. Yeah, I mean, and obviously that's a praiseworthy campaign. Why should they charge extra for plant milk? Why should people who are vegan be penalised for, wanting a cup of tea? But that's not actually about veganism. That's not actually about the principle of veganism. It's not a campaign educating people that it's wrong for humans to exploit our fellow animals, is it?
No.
It's about making it easier to. It's a plant-based campaign, isn't it? It's making it easier to live on a plant-based diet. There's nothing in that about the and I tend to not take part in those ones where it doesn't involve the philosophy, it doesn't involve the principle behind veganism.
Yeah, I've always had a different take on that thing about a surcharge for plant milk, because you just said, why should vegans be penalized for wanting plant milk or plant milks, right? But you could say, why should a cafe be penalized for providing it when not many people are going to use it? Because that's the reason for the surcharge.
The reason for the surcharge is because it's probably costing them more, because dairy milk subsidizes cheaper.
They open the carton, they use it, and then nobody asks for it, and they have to throw it away.
Well, how true that is, I don't know. It does last. It does last a long time in the fridge, doesn't it? It lasts quite a few days in the fridge. A carton of plant milk usually.
I know.
It's longer than dairy milk, I would say.
I always get the impression that it was to do with the fact that there's a lot of wastage as far as
it could be that. I mean, obviously, if they were encouraged to not charge extra for it, and it didn't, and that did encourage more people to choose plant milk instead of dairy milk, that would be a good thing. That would be an excellent thing. But it's nothing to do with veganism. It's nothing to do with the philosophy, the principle of veganism, isn't it? Because if someone is vegan, they're still they're not gonna buy the dairy milk, even if it cost even if it only cost a penny for a cup of tea with dairy milk in it. somebody who's vegan isn't going to do that, and they will pay more for plant milk. Because so it's not to do it's not at all to do with the ethics of it. And so that's, and there are a lot of campaigns like that, various organizations running campaigns about that. And I can see the sort of worthiness of that campaign, but it's nothing to do with veganism.
I love this comment from Jennifer. I can't be bothered running around waving my arms in the air. That's too much effort.
I mean, I'd be exhausted if I waved my arms in the air.
Now, what could possibly account for or excuse that ridiculous stereotype? Because he's not the only one, and he's not said that just once. Sebastian Joy has said it. Use the C word for vegans and stuff. So what is it? What is the end game for them?
Well, they're using it to push they're using it in order to as a ploy to push their point of view, to push what they want. And so you've got to ask, well, why is it they want what they want? What is that all about?
But what they want is vegetarianism. There's a label for it already, Ronnie.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And so what is to be gained from that for our fellow animals, for vegetarianism or pescatarian? What kind of nothing, isn't it? Because you're moving things around. It's just, what one animal exploited instead of another animal, isn't it? It's not, it's not really changing anything.
Yeah. I know that Leonard has argued, and I think there's about 10 years left now. He's argued that there's two phases. One is a pre-vegan phase, and then you've got a vegan phase when society is kind of ready for it, right? So that was his setup. And he thinks that we're still in the pre-vegan stage. And so he would actually argue that we should go very easy on using the word vegan. It's best to talk about reducing, and also don't use words like speciesism unless you're talking to students, because it's too complicated. Those kind of ideas. Don't use animal rights. And so again, if we're in a pre-vegan stage, well, why does he call himself vegan then? Doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, and it does make me wonder about the motives for it. What is that all about? Why do that?
Why do what again? Sorry.
Why do what he does? Why do this dilution of veganism?
Well, he says that if it's diluted and made flexible and has some exceptions, he said that he's in favor of having exceptions built into veganism. And so therefore, if you have exceptions, then you get more members, and then you'd have a bigger vegan movement.
But bigger vegan movement, there wouldn't be vegan.
No, but that doesn't matter for him. He thinks it's an advantage if you've got a lot of people who are not vegan in a movement, even if the price is calling themselves vegan, that's okay.
But once again, as you say, why call it vegan? Why call it vegan? Why are you calling something vegan that isn't vegan?
No.
Why are you doing that? Why do you think that?
Again, the model that I raised would work perfectly here. He goes, I'm in favor of an inclusive movement, but my movement is not vegan, right? My movement is vegetarian, pescatarian stroke vegetarian. That's essentially Leonard's position.
Well, it's reducitarian, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
reducitarian, all those things. Now,
yeah.
So what's wrong with them then going, okay, so I'm not talking to you about veganism. There's other people who can do that, but I'm not there because I don't believe in it. I mean, why can't you put it that way?
That would be a good question to put to him, to say, well, why don't you do that? Why do you insist on using the word vegan for something that isn't vegan?
Well, I think I know the answer actually, Ronnie. So we have to go back to 2010 for this, and the publication of Melanie Joy's vegetarian concept of carnism, right? Now that, because if you remember her early talks, it was always about meat. You know, Leonard, Sebastian Joy, Melanie Joy, they all talk about meat, right? And they tend to focus on flesh products. Now, she used to start with this thing about, you know, you've got to imagine you're at a dinner party and you're enjoying it. You ask the hostess, oh, what was the lovely stew we've just had? And she said, well, you chop up your golden retriever, you know, throw him in the pot kind of thing. And so she would make a meat-based point to introduce carnism, right? Now, at the same time, this is when there were still vegetarian conferences. It certainly was in Dublin. You'd have World Vegetarian Day, then you'd have World Vegan Day, right? But at the same time, the vegetarian ones started to fold and the vegan ones started to get very popular. So they had to switch their position to fit in with the growing vegan scene. And so they managed to get themselves as keynote speakers for many years at the International Animal Rights Conference in Luxembourg, right? I mean, there was even a protest one year because you had Sebastian Joy, who wasn't married to Melanie by then. He was on stage, you know, giving it large, as it were. And he's there, the CEO of the German Vegetarian Society, who were promoting products which were made mainly of eggs, right? And so some activists jumped up on the stage and took the mic off him as a protest, civil disobedience protest against the fact that this animal rights conference had started inviting all these vegetarians in to attack veganism, right? And Melanie Joy then wrote an article saying vegans shouldn't shame vegans, right? Because I responded with an article saying criticizing and shaming are two different things.
Yeah, but they weren't shaming a vegan, were they? Their action was taken against a non-vegan.
Well, no, he would identify as a vegan running the Vegetarian Society because that's in those days. You'll remember this. That's what started to happen. All the vegetarian societies were being run for a few years by vegans, and then of course I suppose they thought, well, what's the point of this?
Well, yeah, you're running an organisation as a vegan that's promoting non-veganism, aren't you?
Yeah, but you've talked about this in the past. Remember when you used to say about the League Against Cruel Sports?
Yes,
full of non-vegans, and suddenly it was full of vegans, but they're still doing.
That's right. It happened with a number of organisations.
Yes, I imagine compassionate world farming is probably staffed exclusively by people who identify as vegans.
It wouldn't surprise me. They're vegans, but pushing a non-vegan message.
Yeah.
But it's because it's like, I mean, a simple explanation might be because, you know, they feel it's better to work for compassionate world farming than to just, you know, have an ordinary job. Even though compassionate world farming isn't a vegan organisation, that may be how, you know, how they feel about it.
Yeah, Michael says ego to him to redefine it. You see, I don't understand that. I think that I've always argued. I remember when I first started doing what I used to call YouTube type things when it was all new to do those. I used to say that I don't regard what the pioneers wrote as law, but it is where we begin in terms of understanding veganism. I mean, they were the ones who formed, as far as we know, they were the first group of people to come together to organize a vegan social movement, and they called it veganism. And until 1944, that word didn't exist, right? Now, the kind of concepts might have done, So I always make sure that people understand that I'm talking about the social movement people, the ones who deliberately came together as a political act in order to form the vegan society. And then they said, right, first job is to come up with the name, and they ended up with vegan, which is good because some of the other names that were put forward were absolutely ridiculous, like dairy bans and all this kind of stuff and all that. So that was quite good. There was quite a bit of luck in the early years of the vegan society, in the sense that the vegetarian society told them to, sling your hook on your bike, mate. We don't want a non-dairy section, and that was brilliant because they suddenly thought, right, we're free to do our own thing. So non-dairy vegetarianism, that got thrown out really early, and then within the next 10 years, they had this philosophy of veganism, which culminated in 1954, Surge of Freedom, right? And so if they were subsumed as a branch or as a section of the vegetarian society, that might never have happened. We might not have a vegan philosophy.
No, it would just be a diet, wouldn't it? It would just be a kind of it would be a kind of add-on to vegetarianism, wouldn't it? Rather than a philosophy.
Yeah, see, what Deb is saying here is really relevant, because there's all kinds of ructions within feminism now, in the same way as there's definitional disputes and everything about veganism. Because I think there's even fourth wave feminism. When I was teaching feminism at kind of first level, university level, we were still on kind of second wave feminism, which started in 1969. So you could say that the first wave was like the suffragists and the suffragettes, and then you ended up with the radical feminists, the black feminists, Marxist feminists, liberal feminists. That was all subsumed into the idea of kind of second wave feminism. But then third wave feminism was really weird, because they started talking about things that the second wave had been arguing against for years. For example, they were saying things like sex work is empowering for women, pornography is empowering for women, the things that the second wave had always argued against, right? So, yeah, you are right. There is some similarities here, that there's been a redefinition of feminism, to the extent that a lot of people won't define themselves as feminists anymore. And you'll notice on social media, it happens a lot now. A lot of people say, I don't use the word vegan anymore. It's too tainted, right?
The difference, though, between sort of feminism and veganism is that veganism, as you say, the name was only invented in 1944, and so there is more of a concrete philosophy associated with it, because feminism could be seen as a kind of as a broader idea, whereas with veganism, there is a specific definition that goes with it, isn't there? And that's the difference.
What do you make of what Carol's saying here? If we talked about vegan, and I think the apostrophe there is to, when
I think it might have been because it maybe started off as kind of just a dietary thing, at the beginning, and then the idea of extending it to a philosophy or mental philosophy came along later.
It took 10 years to blossom into,
and the word already existed.
So we named it, and then they worked out what it meant.
Yes.
And because the vegetarians said no to this section, they were free then to think about, oh, okay, so we've got this new word. What does it mean? And the first thing they did was move away from vegetarianism, to the extent, Watson would call vegetarians the lactose, which is a bit of a dig, But they also used to suggest that they should have a good working relationship with the vegetarians, but be critical of vegetarianism. So, critique vegetarianism, but don't attack vegetarians, which seems like a pretty sensible thing to have done, especially in those early years. I see a lot of vegans nowadays are almost like hypercritical of vegetarians, to the extent that they almost say being a vegetarian is worse than being a flesh consumer.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of could be, depending on the quantity of dairy products that someone eats, consumes, doesn't it?
That is true, actually. Yeah,
that all depends. I mean, the thing is, we have the terms animal liberationists, don't we? And we have the terms, animal rights campaigner or animal rightist, you could say. Those words are used, and people identify.
You don't hear that now, but people used to say I'm a rightist, didn't they?
Yeah, animal rightist, animal liberationist, people say. But I think the thing about that is that it kind of the thing about veganism is the importance within veganism placed on the diet, placed on, that it is a principle, it is a philosophy, but part of being a very important part of being a vegan is adhering to the vegan diet, isn't it? That's considered like vitally important if someone's going to identify as a vegan.
Don't you think that should be de-emphasized? Rather, I do.
Well, I think it's kind of.
I don't.
Inevitably follows, doesn't it?
Fast and loose about the diet.
Yeah. I think basically the philosophy comes first, and the diet is inevitably goes with the philosophy, doesn't it? Because if you're opposed to the exploitation of our fellow animals by humans, then surely the first thing you should do is stop consuming them, stop consuming the products of that exploitation, the direct products of that exploitation. Isn't that the first thing you would do?
The funny thing is, is that Leonard would argue it's the opposite of that, or can be the opposite of that. So rather than attitudinal change would drive behavioral change, he would say that if we can change people's behavior, that will then change their attitude. So in other words, if people have got their meat excuses, as it were, taken away from them, because there's lots and lots of plant-based alternatives which taste exactly the same, so therefore they've got no way of going, well, the reason I'm having this is because it's better than all that vegan stuff. If that excuse is gone, then that might change their attitude. That's what he argues.
So someone's only going to be opposed to the exploitation of our fellow animals if they're able to obtain a vegan cheese that tastes exactly the same as dairy cheese. Is that what he's saying? I don't understand how that works.
Well, because the thing is, Tobias Leonhardt is a meat lover. He said I think he said it took him 20 years to become a vegetarian, and he said he used to love. I mean, I know you said this, but he used to love meat, and so therefore he thinks that having a viable alternative, I mean, they all call it alternative protein now, is very important. And so there's this thing about, the lab-based flesh stuff. I mean, I tend to think there's loads of plant meats already myself.
There's loads already. And I mean, to be quite honest, if there was, it would, I mean, I became vegan when there really wasn't any of that stuff around. At least when I first became vegan, there was, but I wasn't aware of it. I mean, I think, Direct Foods was formed in the 1960s, wasn't it? By Peter Roberts, that they brought out Protoveg, and then Sosmix and stuff like that. That was our first that was the first sort of vegan versions of sausages and burgers and stuff that had the similar texture to meat, and that they were the first. Certainly here in the UK, they were the first versions. Well, when I first became vegan, I didn't know of any of that, and it was a couple of years before I became aware that stuff existed. So the first couple of years of being a vegan, I just, sort of lived on beans and lentils and stuff like that. And if that's all there was, I'd be fine with it. It wouldn't bother me, because I didn't do it for the for the taste of the food.
I would say you're just making veganism too hard for most.
Well,
people.
it isn't too. Well, the thing is, it's not too hard if people understand the reasons for it. If you see what I mean, that's the thing that you kind of the main thing that always gets brought up when I'm doing outreach is the cheese. People say to me, "Oh, I can't." I can't find it. Tried to be vegan, go vegan, but I can't find a vegan cheese that's as nice as the dairy cheese that I enjoy. And I say you're approaching it the wrong way. So you're approaching it the wrong way. What you need to do is to remember that when you buy dairy cheese, you're actually paying people to kill animals. That's what you're doing. Because that it encourages the production of more dairy cheese, and animals, cows and calves are killed, exploited and killed as a result of that. And so the way to do it is to say, right, I'm not going to be part of that. I'm no longer going to consume dairy cheese. I've made that decision. Now, having made that decision, I'm now going to look around to see what I can consume instead. And that's the approach. And that's what I always say to people.
Well, the early members of the Vegan Society used to reply to people who were saying, "Is there a vegan version of this?" And say, "No, and it's not like that we're ever going to have one, so forget it," kind of thing. Whereas,
I don't.
You don't have to say that anymore.
But I don't understand what the big deal is. I don't understand what the big deal is.
People don't like to miss out. This is a social thing.
Well, by not wanting to miss out, what are the consequences of that for our fellow animals?
Yeah, but it's a lot of people are going to be fine with that. Their own proclivities.
If they're fine with that, there's not a lot we can do about it. We've just got to hope there's enough people that aren't fine with that.
Well, the one thing you could do, though, what Leonardo said, is make it easier for those people who are resistant right now.
But those people aren't going to actually be vegan, are they? If they're not,
they might be plant-based.
They might be plant-based, and I agree. If we're having more plant-based people is good as well. Fewer people consume animal products for whatever reason, the better. But if people can be educated to become vegan, then they're going to be, they're going to be stronger in that. And then also, that's going to. That's going to have greater value in changing the culture of society and in changing the politics, isn't it? If people have this philosophical view that it's wrong to exploit our fellow animals and live according to that.
Yeah. Now the vegan anthem here has raised an issue that we've spoken about before. When it says they had no right to change the definition, right? This is talking about the 1979 to 88 definition.
Yeah.
But this raises a really difficult movement issue, because if we are to see that the things that Cross wrote about were stronger than that definition, the new one, the problem is that new one has been the definition of veganism for much, much longer than Leslie Cross's definition ever was. So therefore, isn't that there de facto the definition of veganism? And how do we argue that we should abandon the new one and go back to the old one?
Well, I think we can argue it by saying, what were you doing, going against what was the definition of veganism? What were you doing, changing it in a way that actually altered it? I mean, it can be put across using different words, the same meaning of that original definition, because already, we would change certain words, wouldn't we? What was it? Man should live without exploiting animals. Well, we wouldn't use man, would we? We'd use humans instead today.
Yeah.
So, there are changes that we'd make, but that doesn't change the meaning of the definition. But what you're not entitled to do is actually change the meaning of the definition.
I was looking up the animal welfare stuff that is going through in Britain. All those consultations that all the welfare people are doing. It's really interesting. If you go to the government site, they're still using the phrase "man" for humanity, which is I didn't expect that.
No. Well, I'm a bit surprised about that, I think, but
so that's kind of weird. Right, I'm still going through these comments. I don't know if you've seen anything that you want to. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, because that's it is like seeking what they sought, isn't it? It's kind of wanting what they wanted. We might use different words to describe that, but the principle's still the same.
Okay, so excuse me, I'm just trying to. Difficult to talk and read at the same time, isn't it? Especially when Ronnie doesn't cover for me.
No, I don't. But the thing is, I have difficulty reading the comments because of my eyesight.
Yeah.
I think I probably need new glasses. I can't actually read them unless I go like right up to the screen.
What you need, Ronnie, is one of these.
A telescope. Yes, probably. I probably need glasses like that. A pair of glasses as big as that on my face.
It's even got a light on it. Look at that.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
I'll tell you why I got that is because if you get things like, plant-based multivits and stuff, the writing on those is so minute.
It's tiny, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I would hold it like, I'd go like that and then hold it right up. That's how I read it. Yeah. So I'd be like right up against the screen trying to read that, because it's it's not a big computer, it's just a laptop, so it's quite small.
Don't start reading other people's t-shirts like that, Ronnie. You'll get into trouble.
Yes.
The
writing on t-shirts is normally a bit bigger.
Yeah. Do you like total liberation as a concept, Ronnie? I imagine you would.
Yes. Yeah, I do, because I think the fundamental problem we kind of have on this planet is supremacism. I think that causes every form of oppression, isn't it? Where one group thinks they're superior to another, entitled to oppress and exploit the other group, and that that applies to human oppression of other humans as well as human oppression of our fellow animals. So the speciesism is a form of supremacism, along with sexism, racism, homophobia, all the others. I'd say they're all forms of supremacism, prejudice, and so total liberation. Yeah, to end all these forms of supremacism. Yeah, absolutely, that's what we need. And animal liberation is a really important part of that, because obviously the group that suffers the greatest oppression by far at the hands of another group are it's the oppression that our fellow animals suffer at the hands of humans, isn't it?
Oh, thanks, Mark. Thanks for saying that. Most people just tell us to F off, don't they, Ronnie? But
they kind of do, yeah.
So Linda is saying what you were saying before. This thing about.
That's why, yeah, that's right, yeah. And I talk about myself as well, because I think it's really important. People don't think that you're like accusing them and thinking they're a bad, calling them a bad person. And I talk about myself because I was a huge meat eater. I probably ate more meat than Tobias Lennart, to be quite honest. I was absolutely horrendous before I became vegetarian, and then it didn't take me too long to become vegan after that. Really, a couple of years later, I
Yeah,
found out.
you two get on like a world.
Well, I'd ask him. I'd say, why do you insist on saying you're vegan when it's not veganism? So why are you? I'd just ask him. Can you tell me?
Now this is interesting from Carolyn about. We were talking about. You would be much less entitled, whereas nowadays consumers.
I think we live in a I want society. Where people are very selfish, very materialistic, and that's been encouraged because, of course, it's in the interest of capitalism and big business to encourage that, and that's very harmful to our fellow animals in a lot of ways, especially in terms of the destruction of the natural world to provide all these things we don't actually need. And consumerism is the enemy of animal liberation. But we've been all encouraged to become consumers in the interests of those who want to line their pockets from the profits to be made from that, and that's what's happened. And so, of course, that's that's I want this, I'm entitled to that, and it's decadence. We live in a highly decadent society, and food's a big part of that. We're decadent as far as food is concerned. Why do we need all these nutritious and really tasty food can be made really simply, can be made from from all sorts of the plant kingdom. We've got so many delicious tastes in the plant kingdom.
What did I say? 88,000 edible plants or something, isn't it?
Yeah, massive, and lovely, lovely tastes and everything. And the simple meal can be really tasty, can be really nutritious, and can be really cheap. But food has been, it's become decadent. Eating has become something that's decadent.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Now this is one of the lines that is extracted from Leslie Cross regularly, and I'm probably going to say something that's going to upset the vegan anthem, and maybe even you, Ronnie, because you don't like the phrase "animals only vegans," do you?
No, because I think it's giving them too much credit. Because I think they tend to have views that are harmful to our fellow animals. So I would prefer to call them like reducitarian vegans, because they're seeking to reduce what veganism is to much less than it really is. They're seeking to very much limit the scope of veganism in various ways, because often it isn't just about animals only. It's about it's more than that. It's more restrictive than that even.
Yeah, well, you see, I think that the cross definition is really useful. Now, there's several versions of this. There's about at least 4. In fact, there's a controversial one from 1974 where he says the doctrine should be that man, in his own interests, should live without exploiting animals, which doesn't get reproduced that often. But
no.
I tend to think that cherry picking from Leslie Cross is a real disservice and rather insulting to him as a journalist. AV used this definition.
Yeah, you see, my position on it is that is whatever veganism is, it has to be at least that, right?
Well, this is the core of veganism.
That's the core of veganism.
Yeah.
And then you see, my view is that once people accept that, if they accept that it's wrong for humans to exploit our fellow animals, then other things flow from that in terms of what is consistent with it. In other words, if it's wrong for humans to exploit our fellow animals, then surely it must be wrong for humans to exploit other humans. It also must be wrong for humans to oppress our fellow animals and to oppress fellow humans.
Yeah, but
because
it's not as though they left it for people to kind of twig that. They said that repeatedly. So,
yeah,
for example,
I mean,
an example of that would be Leslie Cross talked about the two broad aspects of being.
Yeah, but
the first one was this,
yeah,
and then the second one was the benefits to humanity.
But you see, I think what tends to happen, it's a bit like where people select certain things from the Bible, don't they? And then some of those things can turn out to be contradictory. I think Leslie Cross wrote so much that people can go into what he wrote and pick out what they want, if you see what I mean. And that's the problem, and they have done that. And so, I mean, I prefer myself to just to say, okay, right, you accept this as the fundamental definition of veganism, the principle that humans shouldn't exploit other animals. Okay, now let's look at this other view that you've got, or this other thing you do, and is that consistent with that? If you see what I mean, is exploiting humans consistent with that? How can it be consistent if you're opposed to the exploitation of our fellow animals by humans? How can it be consistent then if you're okay with humans being exploited by humans? How is that consistent? That's what I'd ask people.
Yeah, and what I'd say about Leslie Cross and the need really, and the fairness really of reading him in its totality. Andy Atkinson has narrated all of Leslie Cross's main essays, and you can find it on his YouTube channel, which is not your mum, not your milk, Andy Atkinson. And so if you don't like to read the essays, he actually reads them out, and they're all there. And that really is the only fair way, really, I think, of engaging with Leslie Cross, not extracting a sentence. I think that's rather unfair of him.
Yeah, but I think the thing is you're faced with people who do that, and so it's how you talk to those people. And I'd say, well, okay, so that's what you believe. It's just that sentence. Okay, well, let's look at that. What's consistent with that? What other things are consistent with that? What other things are inconsistent with that? And that's how I approach people like that.
Okay, I've got a question just for me here. Hi, Roger. I sent you a question on TikTok. Okay. Yeah, I do read these ones. It's TikTok I don't engage with too well, actually. I'm not great with that. But I'll make a note right now. TikTok. I wonder what TikTok is like in the States now, because it's been bought, hasn't it? You know, the States version of TikTok has been bought. You know,
is it Trump talk now?
I think it probably is. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, probably grift talk.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about the most corrupt presidency ever. We're talking about there, isn't it? It's incredible what's going on.
I mean, it's just crazy, isn't it? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable, really, to be honest.
Right, okay. I'm just going through Roger and Ronnie and Vegan. Oh, right. Hello, Wendy. So I can't just fly past Wendy's.
Yeah.
I'd be shot at dawn if I didn't acknowledge.
Yeah, hi, Wendy. Yeah, it's all right. We've still got another couple of hours to go, Wendy, so you're not really that late. Probably.
No, actually, I don't agree with that. It is cherry picking because it's the same. It's the same one or maybe two that is used over and over again, and the context in which it was written, and then the evolving context. For example, one thing that use the phrase again, Ronnie. So excuse me, but the animals only vegans, they won't use the first paragraph of in search of freedom. And the reason for that, this is the 1954 one, is that it immediately starts talking about humans, right? Which, you know, admittedly, we might think, well, that's the wrong way around, really. But they weren't kind of that bothered, really. They saw veganism as so encompassing of everything justice based. It didn't really matter if you talk about humans first, you know. But they tended to talk about they talked about our fellow animals first, generally speaking. So I wouldn't quite agree with this, because the sentences that are cut out are something like 7, 9, you know, 9 words long out of an entire essay. You know, I don't think that's acceptable. I really don't. Right, I think we're getting to the end.
Yeah, because I mean, we need to talk about the
TikTok.
kind of TikTok. Yeah, yeah.
That's Philip's idea.
Yeah, I mean, we need to talk about your idea of
That'd be
division of
good
labor.
reverse, wouldn't it? It'd be toxic. Haha, that'd be quite good, wouldn't it?
Toxic, it would be, yes. Yeah, yeah.
My idea. Oh yeah. Well,
yeah. I mean, see, yeah. I mean, how I sort of look at it is like we have to ask ourselves, what do we want? What do we want? Animal liberation. When do we want it now? Right.
Yeah, 30 years ago. Thanks.
Yeah. So when we use that phrase, animal liberation, what do we mean? What do we mean by that? It means more than just, you know, animals here and there being liberated from places. Maybe it means more than some battery hens being rescued from a battery farm, or animals being taken out of a laboratory. When people say that, what do we want animal liberation? They mean much more than that. What we mean when we say that is we want a total change in society. You know, we want a society where our fellow animals are no longer oppressed and exploited by humans, or at least as near as possible that we can get to that. You know, like we need it. You know, we need it big time, don't we? We need it across the board. You know, we need that to be the culture of our society, where the predominant culture is what I would call an animal liberationist culture, where people believe that humans should not exploit our fellow animals and live according to that. And that's really what we mean by animal liberation, isn't it? You know, when people say that, they're talking about, you know, a completely different world, where our fellow animals are free from exploitation and oppression at the hands of humans. And so, how do we get to that? What do we need to do to get to that? You see, and the first thing we need to do is, we're never going to get that unless a very large number of humans believe in it. How are we going to get to that unless, if only a tiny minority believe in the principle of animal liberation, then how are we going to get it? We're not. So we have to fundamentally change the views, the mindset of a large number of ordinary people. And that can only be done by education, but educating people about, you know.
But that wouldn't have to be vegan education, would it?
Well, educating people about the importance of our fellow animals no longer being exploited and oppressed by humans, or indeed of there being an end to all exploitation and oppression. So we wouldn't need to use the word vegan in doing that education, but it just so happens that vegan covers that, doesn't it? That is veganism in the big, you know, in its focus and scope. So so what we're talking about is vegan education. Animal liberationist education is vegan education.
Yeah, just a little aside, you could think of this point in terms of focus and scope. Actually, depending on which feminist you talk to, then feminism is about men, because the argument is that the patriarchy harms men as well as women, but the focus is on women. You could say that the scope includes men.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is, if someone believes that our fellow animals shouldn't be exploited by humans, but that it's okay for humans to exploit other humans, then I'd say that those views were inconsistent. That's how I'd approach it.
My idea, Ronnie, it hasn't got a hope in hell, really, has it? It's like a snowball.
Well, the thing is that, kind of going on from what I said, it means we have to have, and there's all sorts of things that people do that are of benefit to our fellow animals that are very praiseworthy in terms of, saving the lives of other animals, in terms of rescuing them, in terms of sparing them from suffering and slaughter. There's all sorts of praiseworthy activities. People do animal rescue. People do hunt saboteurs, don't they? People do the single issue campaigns, and I'm talking really about abolitionist campaigns. Now, all these things are, I regard all these things as praiseworthy, and I regard them all as making the world a better place for some animals. And what the ALF did was, praiseworthy. I believe millions of fellow animals were spared from suffering and slaughter because of ALF actions. But none of those things will bring about animal liberation. No matter how praiseworthy they are, we're not going to get animal liberation through animal rescue. We're not going to get animal liberation through hunt saboteurs. We're not going to get animal liberation through protesting against vivisection. Yes, we'll get some improvements, for our fellow animals, but we're not going to get this widespread animal liberation. An animal liberation society that is what is in people's minds when they chant, "What do we want? Animal liberation." We're only going to achieve that society through widespread and frequent vegan outreach, because we'll only achieve that society when we change the mindset of a large number of ordinary people.
Always comes down to cultural speciesism, because age aside, you wouldn't go something now, would you, Ronnie?
Yeah. It does come down to cultural speciesism. If we're going to change cultural speciesism, we've got to change the mindset of a lot of individuals in order to change the culture. And then also, when you change the culture, you change the politics. You get more vegans involved in politics, and so you get the right political decisions, to end, to end all these various forms of oppression of our fellow animals as well at a political level. And so and that's the thing. So, that what needs to be said to all vegans, it's an unless. What you're doing now in whatever you're doing that isn't vegan outreach, is very praiseworthy. But unless we have a hell of a lot more vegan outreach, we are not going to achieve animal liberation. When we want it now, well, we're not going to get it now, but we want to get it at some stage. And we won't get it at some stage unless there's a hell of a lot more vegan outreach. So who's going to do that outreach? Are you going to be part of something that's very praiseworthy, that saves and spares a very small number of animals compared with the total number that are oppressed and exploited? Or are you going to be part of the revolution? Are you going to be part of something that completely changes the world and saves and spares animals, on our fellow animals, on a massive scale? Which is it going to be? And that's what I put to all put to all vegans, whatever they're involved in, just to encourage, every vegan to become involved as much as they can in outreach and in education.
Yeah, but you raise a really difficult question here, Ronnie, because I think that there's a lot of vegans who don't, and we talked about this in the Animal Rights Show, the last one, who don't actually think a vegan world will come about, and so therefore.
But would those people be chanting, what do we want, animal liberation, when do we want it now? And if they don't believe a vegan world can come about, why are they chanting that on a march or on a protest?
Right, it's just because it's a chant.
It's a chant, yeah, but like the chant is something that you don't believe in. If we are ever going to get that, now I don't know whether it's going to happen. If we're ever going to get that, then we won't get it unless there's widespread vegan outreach. We won't get it without that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
But it's going to.
And so if people want that, but even if you didn't believe, right, that it was possible, and so you're sort of thinking, well, we're never going to achieve widespread animal liberation. So what I want to do is just try and spare as many animals as I can, rescue as many as I can from the fire, so to speak. That's what I want to do, try and do the most effective, efficient thing I can to save or spare as many as possible. The answer to that's vegan outreach as well. Because it's certainly in the UK, every person who's educated to become vegan, right, equates to about 100 animals every year being spared from exploitation and slaughter, because that's the amount of demand that you reduce.
Well, that's a contested idea, though, isn't it? That
it
doesn't reduce demand at all.
Yeah, but then why are they vegan? Why be vegan if it makes no difference? Of course, they know. They know in their hearts that it does make a difference. Otherwise, why be vegan? What would be the point? That's why those people, because they actually know that. The people that say it makes no difference are saying it in order to justify themselves not doing it, because they don't want to do it because other forms of action appeal to them more emotionally. That's why.
Yeah, well,
it's used as an excuse. Yeah,
there's some things for you to address here. This is Wendy's new bag about getting involved with school talks and stuff. So
yeah, really good. I think school talks are really important. I think the difficulty is that you can't, when you talk to children, they're still under the control of their parents. So, you may persuade them that, they should be vegan, but of course when they get home, because their parents go, no, you're going to eat what I give you. And
have you ever been a parent, Ronnie?
No, I've never been a parent, thankfully.
No, well, there's not a great deal of control, I'll tell you that. but certainly that's what my parents would have done. If I had gone home at the age of like 9 or 10 years old and said, right, I don't want to eat meat anymore, I want to be a vegan, and that, then I'd have. Yeah, well, funny enough, Wendy said earlier today that I think when she announced that she was a vegetarian, her parents were supportive. And you remember Mimi Spence, don't you?
Yeah. Well, some parents, yeah.
She went vegetarian at 4 and vegan at 7, and the family followed through.
Oh yeah, no, that does happen sometimes. Yes, I know. And when Louise went vegetarian, her family were very supportive. And she went vegetarian when she was 7, I think. Mine wouldn't have been. It all depends.
Yes, indeed.
It varies. Yeah. I think what you can do with children is plant a seed that they can act on when they're old enough to be able to act on.
When they get their independence. Well, which is why everybody talks about, when they escape to college or university, then you become you, don't you? And all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I did an event with. It was with It was last week, and it was Cub Scouts, and they're aged between about 8 and 10 years old. So the material had to be in keeping with that. It's sort of about respect for fellow animals.
Yeah, I've done loads of that. Now, this is from Deb. Does vegan outreach also include informal conversations with non-vegans? I think you're going to say yes to that, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. You see, when I talk about outreach, I'm talking about, vegans doing the maximum they can in terms of outreach. Because I think, I agree with what you've said many times, rather that in a sense all vegans do outreach, because just by being a vegan, people are going to ask you questions, aren't they? And then you're going to answer, and that might cause someone else to be vegan. Yeah, that does happen. It probably happens with all vegans, but I'm not talking about kind of being happy with the minimum. That's the minimum, isn't it? I'm talking about, everyone doing as much as they can, in terms of their own, particular life situation, doing as much as they can to promote veganism, not being happy just doing the minimum.
Yeah, how are you getting on with your concept of in-reach, Ronnie? Because my idea would rely on it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think in-reach is really important, because I think that that when someone
why do you cut off the comments then on your posts?
Because I haven't got time to deal with them, and basically, if people, see what was happening on some of my posts was that people were arguing with each other, and sometimes it became, it's like it became abusive, and really, so I thought, well, then as the person who put the post, it's my duty to kind of step in and do something about that. And I kind of didn't have time. So I thought, well, the best thing to do is just say no comments. But if there's something you want to speak to me about, you don't agree with or whatever, then message me. And sometimes people do message me about things, and I have a discussion with them on Messenger. But that's really why. It's just lack of time. No, I haven't got time to monitor all the comments. So that I think therefore it's preferable to not allow them. But I mean, within reach, I mean, what we're doing on the show is in reach. We'll watch this, and that they might have had a different idea what veganism was or is, and they'll learn from us that about what it really is, so to speak. That's the thing. That's the in reach.
And we'll learn from them.
Well, we may do, yeah. We may learn from, people may.
Going back to vegan education as a general matter, Ronnie, are you confident that most people who will do it, and we need more of them, know what veganism is?
I think some do and some don't, and I think this is where InReach comes in again, isn't it? If we're constantly putting out there what veganism actually is, what it is, and what the focus of veganism is and what the scope of veganism is. If we're constantly talking about that, if we're constantly putting that out, that's in reach. We can do really, isn't it? To be honest, and I think that in reach is something that probably social media, including this, is more useful for, because we're going to mainly reach vegans on social media. Where we'd go to reach non-vegans would be more out in the street, wouldn't it? But you see, the majority of my friends and followers on social media are already vegan. So really, what I'd be doing with them is really in reach rather than outreach, because they already identify as vegans. Whereas outreach is more, out in the outside world. The only way there are ways of doing outreach on social media, but it's, I think it's something we have to think carefully about. Otherwise, we're just talking to other vegans.
I mean, have you seen this one? In no respect for your elders, shall we use the sorting hat to divide up labour? That's a
sorting hat. That's an old.
Well, it's a Potter thing, isn't it? Harry Potter thing.
Oh, I haven't read any Harry Potter.
No,
I've never read Harry Potter.
Yeah. I think it was Leslie. The guy who used to go, "Oh, ding dong." Well, who was it? he was a sorting hat, wasn't he? But anyway,
Oh,
going back to more serious, John here is saying, Ronnie, comments is what feeds the video to people, though. Well, you're kind of talking about posts rather than videos, aren't you? But you post a lot of videos.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, yes, I mean, I understand that. I understand that if you do a post, that the more comments, that if you get loads of comments on it, more people see it. But then I've got to balance that against not just having the time to. And you see, if people are going to put abusive comments on there, which they have done, because I'll post on, some of the posts I put are controversial. I'm trying to kind of get people to think about things and kind of extend their idea of what veganism includes. A lot of my stuff's about environmental, destruction of like natural habitat being something that vegans should be concerned about. It's not just about like food, and it's not just about exploitation. It's kind of beyond that, and sometimes that can be controversial to people, and then they can argue amongst themselves and be, what it's like, becomes abusive.
Yeah.
And then it would be my duty to intervene.
It's very difficult, The last thing I posted, which got a lot of views, it's still going on. But I think the first comment was Louise, I think. Anyway,
I think the other thing is that I tend to share, certain posts. I'll share with loads of vegan groups, and they get like, they're normally videos, and they do get thousands of views. I mean, how long people watch it for, I don't know, but
you can find that out as far as I know.
Yeah, well, I tend to only post short videos anyway, because I think sometimes when people, I mean, there will be people that watch this all the way through that, but a lot of people see that the videos.
A lot of people won't know because we're getting on for 2 hours here. So
2 hours, yeah, but you see,
we better wrap it up. But I posted, you remember the sausage man guy who was on the Jeremy Vine?
The guy that.
I was sorting through a few files and I saw that. And I thought, I'll just bung that back up again because some people might not know it. And so that got loads of views and lots of comments. But there wasn't many comments which were engaging with what was going on, because what happened there was this guy did a complete reversal of his opinion about plant-based sausages when he learned that he was calling one of them luscious and all that. That's right. That exposes the depth of cultural speciesism, because he was prepared to make a fool of himself in order to be faithful to the culture. Almost, it was really bizarre.
Because they gave him two vegan sausages, and he was under the impression that one of them was meat. And he said, "Oh, this one's horrible. This is obviously the vegan one, but this one is absolutely wonderful," thinking that was the meat one, but in fact they were both vegan.
Yeah, he called it, and so he called the one that he thought was plant-based, he called it cardboard. Yeah, and then he called the other one, which was also plant-based, luscious, right? And he said something else, luscious and something else. I can't quite remember what the second thing. But when Jeremy Vine then said, "Oh, actually, they're both plant-based," he then goes, "Oh, well, this one's cardboard and this one's like tissue paper." So it went from luscious.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he kind of But it was already too late, wasn't it? He'd already said it was luscious.
No, but what I'm saying is that his commitment to cultural speciesism was so great that he couldn't just go, "Oh, that's interesting."
That's right.
He had to. As soon as it was plant-based, he had to slag it off.
Yeah. Well, you see, I've known people, and you often get a case, the woman's vegan and her husband isn't, and she's secretly feeding the husband vegan food and not telling him, like mince or whatever it is. And then he's going, "Oh, this is lovely, this is lovely, this is lovely." And when she tells him, then you turn around and go, "No, it's horrible." Been eating it for weeks and weeks and really enjoying it, and I've known that happen a few times.
Yeah.
No.
Well, there's my famous prison thing, isn't there, about that guy who was almost sick?
Yeah, because of, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's very, very, very odd.
Yeah, very odd. Right. Well, thank you very much for your company, Ronnie. I suppose we ought to do the decent thing and shut up and go away.
Well, yeah, we can go and I can go and have a cup of tea and stuff now and lie down.
All right. Okay. Well, or drink the tea before you lie down, otherwise it might end up.
That's right. Might be a bit difficult. Yeah.
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 So, I am going back to my idea, such as it is. I am confused about people who don't present a vegan case wanting to be called vegan. Although I suppose I can see it could be about money. I mean, what isn't? It could be that, you know, as well.
Yeah, it could be. It's just odd to me. And have they ever been asked that direct question? Why are you saying you're a vegan when you're not?
See, but you don't see any vegetarian advocacy now, do you? So maybe there's no money in it. So you have to call your vegetarianism veganism.
You don't have any vegetarian outreach, do you?
No, that's what I'm saying. So you've got to call your vegetarianism veganism now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why. No, I kind of don't know. I don't know.
It's a sad state of affairs that you would distort the meaning of something very, very good, which is vegan philosophy, for some reason like that. That is very sad, really, to me. Anyway.
Well, presumably there is money in it. I mean, the organisation that he works for and all that, so he gets paid and money's coming into there from somewhere, isn't it? If that's where.
Not only that, but Pro Veg, which he co-formed with Sebastian Joy, they actually sponsor. See, this is how insidious it gets. They actually sponsor conferences now. He sponsored a conference at the University of Kent the last year or the year before. When Wendy went to it, she was viewing in the audience. And so this is a vegan conference, though, Ronnie. So because they sponsored it, Pro Veg, that meant that Leonard could claim the keynote speech in which he told everybody that the best way to be vegan is not to be vegan.
Yeah, that's just crazy, isn't it? It's just crazy. So it's insidious, really, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, the very word I use, Ronnie.
But you see, I think there's this huge complication that with all these conferences, there's all these different voices promoting different things and all that. When really it's ever so simple, isn't it? It's ever so simple. We just need loads more vegan outreach, and so it's kind of like a Tower of Babel, isn't it? Is that the right pronunciation? Yeah, where there's people speaking in all different languages and nobody could understand what other people are saying and all that.
Yeah, can you imagine advertising being like the vegan movement, where
I mean it's just like kind of so
it describes one thing.
And I'm trying to put forward this really, really simple idea, really, really simple and clear cut, and what I would describe as really a very obvious idea of how of really the only way that we achieve animal liberation, or what we have to do if we want to achieve animal liberation. And it seems like really simple and really logical, but you're up against all this noise, you're up against all this static going on all the time, trying to get that message through. And I think some of that static is caused by these conferences.
Hey, we're the two R's now, Ronnie. So
the two arses.
No, that was my cue to say, that's good. That's goodbye from me, and that's goodbye for him. That's what they used to say. The two Ronnies.
Yes.
Right, people. We'll see you again, hopefully.
Yeah.
And
we'll be back again, but it all depends on one thing, doesn't it, Roger?
Yeah. What does it depend on, Ronnie?
Well, it definitely depends on us being still alive.